Hello everyone, welcome back for the last video of Rolling Thunder. We'll be reading chapters 25 and 26 today. I'm very excited to have the book done. It took a while, but it was well worth it. We left off the story with the peyote tea ceremony, and now we'll be on to chapter 25, Closing the Circle. In the last week of April 1972, I telephoned the little market in Carlin, Nevada, and left a message asking that Rolling Thunder call me in Berkeley. He had recently returned from his very long stay in the Berkeley Hills that had ended with the peyote tea ceremony, and he was undoubtedly just beginning to get his busy life in order again. Nevertheless, I had to ask him whether he would be willing to come back to San Francisco right away. The announcements for the Association for Humanistic Psychology Conference on Psychic Healing and Self-Healing were out, and Rolling Thunder was named among the speakers. If he could get away a week early, and if he was willing to do it, there were 5 interviews tentatively arranged for him on San Francisco radio and television talk shows. It would be a strenuous agenda, and though I would not have been surprised if he had refused to do even one interview, I was hoping he would do them all. He called me after midnight the following night. He agreed. It was arranged that we would meet him at the Oakland airport in 2 days. Now, this is the schedule for the entire week, I told him. I've typed up the dates and the times of all these programs as well as the places that we have to get to, when we should arrive and whom we should meet. This copy is for you. I have my own copy and I'll go with you to all these places, so you don't really have to give much thought about the schedule. We were sitting in the living room in the house in the Berkeley Hills. He would stay in this house again until after the conference. The Committee of Concern for the Traditional Native had offered him use of the committee car, and Buffalo Horse would drive. Now this one right here, I said, pointing to the 3rd day on the schedule. This one's a live radio talk show with call-in questions and it has a wide listening audience. On all the other programs you'll be alone, but you'll be sharing this one with Sister Justice Smith. So you'll be talking and answering questions together, I think. She's a PhD and a Franciscan nun. A what? He smiled. She's a doctor of biochemistry and a Catholic nun. Oh, okay. Sister Justice Smith was the only other speaker who had been able to include a schedule for radio and TV interviews. I was not certain whose idea it was to have her and Rolling Thunder interviewed together. I wondered what Rolling Thunder would think of the Catholic nun, and what the nun would think of the medicine man. I hoped it would be all right for both of them. On the day Rolling Thunder was scheduled for the radio show, Buffalo Horse and I got him to San Francisco early, but Justice Smith came to the studio directly from her New York plane. She sat down in front of the microphone, just as the program went on. Rolling Thunder and Justice Smith got acquainted on the air. Rolling Thunder talked about the superiority of such natural foods as piñon nuts over commercially processed foods. Sister Justice Smith warned about dangerous preservatives and food additives. During the commercials, they complimented each other. That was good. That was important. You should say more of that. Buffalo Horse and I went to another room to get coffee for Rolling Thunder. Sister Justice said she did not care for coffee and made it apparent she never used it. I thought you said she was a nun, Buffalo Horse said as soon as we were outside. She is. Then where's her outfit or her uniform or whatever you call it? I don't know, but she's a nun. That's what the announcement said. Everyone calls her sister. Well, nuns drink coffee, don't they? I think so, but evidently she never drinks it. When the program was over, Sister Justice Smith called for her transportation. Rolling Thunder and Buffalo Horse and I left. On the way, Rolling Thunder said, I would have liked to have talked to her more. She was an interesting lady. Well, since she's one of the speakers at the conference, we'll be meeting her again, I said. She's a pretty nice nun, said Buffalo Horse. She's a fine lady, but what I mean is, I think I'm interested in what she's doing. I had a feeling there was something I wanted to ask her, but I didn't know what it was. What does she do, anyway? I don't know completely what she does, but I heard that she is studying the effects that healers can produce on enzymes in test tubes. Oh. Well, we'll be meeting her again, and then I'll see what it is I wanted to find out from her. The last interview before the conference was a live television talk show called The Bentley Affair. Rolling Thunder had appeared on another television interview the second night after he arrived. It was taped at a convenient time in the evening. For The Bentley Affair, we had to be in the Channel 5 studio in San Francisco by 8:30 in the morning. Buffalo Horse arrived with the committee car at 7:30 and wanted to leave right away to allow plenty of time to reach San Francisco. Rolling Thunder had gotten up at the last minute. "Let's go," he said. "It's going to take a long time. We'll be right in the morning rush hour." Rolling Thunder had gotten up at the last minute. We wanted to give him breakfast. It was all too fast for him, and he left the house without his tobacco. He realized that fact as we were driving through Berkeley. I saw him reach into a pocket of his sports coat, which was lying on the seat beside him, take out his pipe, and reach into the pocket again. He picked up his coat, put his hands into another pocket and then another pocket. He stretched his legs and checked his pants pockets. Then he looked on the seat where the coat had been, even on the floor. Suddenly he waved his arms through the air and snapped his fingers loudly. "What's the matter?" asked Buffalo Horse. "I forgot my pipe tobacco." He began to go through his pockets again. Buffalo Horse felt along the seat as he drove, behind him and on the floor under his feet. I began to look around in the back seat, and Buffalo Horse even opened the glove compartment. "It can't be in there," said Rolling Thunder. "We just came out and I got in the car a few minutes ago, you know." "I know," said Buffalo Horse, "but you've got your pipe right in your hand, so your tobacco's got to be here somewhere." "Well, I had my pipe in my coat pocket. That's where I put it this morning." Buffalo Horse put his hand in every pocket of his father's coat. "Look, the tobacco's not here. It's in the bedroom in the house. I had my pipe upstairs, and I put it out before I sat down to eat breakfast. I had my coat with me upstairs. I know exactly where the tobacco is. It's on that little table with the bumpy stone top. I filled my pipe and set it down right there." "Do you want to go back?" "We can't go back. We'd never make it." "Maybe we can buy some in San Francisco," I said. I knew the tobacco was important. Rolling Thunder had always used the tobacco for his rituals and ceremonies or whenever he was in deep thought or planning. Although he did not light his pipe in the studios, he smoked a pipeful of the strong mixture before every interview. He said nothing all the way to San Francisco. It was a long, slow ride across the Bay Bridge. Buffalo Horse and I talked, but Rolling Thunder, who was usually cheerful before these events, only stared silently out the window. Buffalo Horse made his way through San Francisco, and we reached the station well ahead of time. We used up precious minutes looking for a parking place. Rolling Thunder still did not speak. He didn't turn his head to look for an open parking space, which was unusual for him. I could not believe he was nervous about the television program. He hadn't been nervous before. I knew he was not a habitual tobacco user, but his pipe may have been really necessary now. I wondered if he was upset about having to rush off without his tobacco. Perhaps he was just enjoying the morning. I could not see his face from the back seat, and I hoped he was all right. I began to speak to him. "We'll get inside plenty early, I think. If we don't find a place to park, you and I can go in first and meet Helen Bentley. They told me she would want to talk with you for a while before airtime." "I've got it," snapped Rolling Thunder. "All right, I've got it right here." He turned around in his seat and held out his hand to me. The tobacco pouch was in his hand. I knew right where it was. It's not so hard when you know where it is. He was waving his tobacco pouch and smiling very broadly. Then he looked at me seriously. These things can be done. When there's a need for it, it can be done. Buffalo Horse parked in the block behind the station. Rolling Thunder was busy filling his pipe. Buffalo Horse glanced at me as if to check on my reaction to such a thing. He may have thought I would be shocked, embarrassed, or laughing, thinking that I had been kidded. It was difficult for my mind to accept that Rolling Thunder had just brought his pouch of tobacco into the moving car from the little bedside table across the bay. Still, I did believe it. My knowledge that the tobacco had not been in the car and my knowledge of Rolling Thunder were much more certain than my knowledge that such things are impossible. I knew that Rolling Thunder would not mention this in any interview or lecture. Yet, I had been there and he had allowed me to see it. This could have been my chance to know how such things are done, if only Rolling Thunder would have explained it, or if only I could have asked. The three of us went inside the studio and sat down in the waiting room. Rolling Thunder could sit and puff on his pipe until Helen Bentley sent for him. Pat Schaefer came in with her sister and another of the conference speakers. They wanted to meet Rolling Thunder. "I've heard a lot about you," Pat said, "from Doug and then Sister Justice Smith." Pat Schaefer mentioned that Sister Justice's luggage had been lost. She had arranged for someone to get the luggage while Sister Smith rushed from the airport to the radio station. When the person went to pick it up, it was gone. "I feel so bad about it," Pat said. "She has only the dress she's wearing. Her dress for the lecture and everything she needs is in her luggage." Someone came for Rolling Thunder. Helen Bentley was ready now. Someone came for Rolling Thunder. Helen Bentley was ready now. I walked back to the studio with him, carrying some pictures we had taken of the Pinyon Forest chaining in case they could be used. "That's really too bad about the lady's luggage," Rolling Thunder said. "It will be necessary for her to have that, and it can be located. I can't concentrate on it just now, but I think after this program." Helen Bentley was standing at the end of the hall with her hand outstretched. I gave her the pictures and listened while she and Rolling Thunder talked. While they were on the air, I walked quietly back and forth between the studio and the waiting room so that I could watch Rolling Thunder alternatively before the cameras and on the television screen. During a commercial, I walked up to his chair to hand him a paper that had names and addresses of some information sources he wanted to read on the air. "The lady's luggage is not lost," he mumbled to me. "She may not know it yet, but it isn't lost or missing." After the show, Rolling Thunder had a long conversation with Helen Bentley while I went back to the waiting room. "I'm afraid I missed most of Rolling Thunder just now," Pat apologized to me. "I've been on the phone almost all the while. But I've got some good news. Sister Justice Smith's luggage was not lost. It's just been found at the airport. The person we sent to get it misunderstood the time and the place to pick it up, and only thought it was gone." When Rolling Thunder heard about the luggage, he said, "So it was all right all the while then. Well, that's good." As we drove back home over the bridge, he filled his pipe again and was happy. The next thing would be the big lecture itself. It would be his first experience on the stage in front of such a huge crowd of strangers. But he was in great form and I knew it would go well. If I were anybody else, I thought as we rode along, I would probably be asking, "Just how did you know about Sister Justice's luggage being found?" In the Masonic Auditorium on the morning of Saturday, May 6, 1972, Rolling Thunder spoke to a public audience of nearly 3,000 people. This was part of a new beginning. There had not been a communication like this before. There had been Hollywood natives, commercial natives, and native Euro craftsmen. There had been traditional native speakers from many tribes who have told school children and women's groups about peace pipes, wigwams, and moccasins. There have been eloquent native leaders and spokesmen who have presented and represented the ideologies and the needs of their people. But Rolling Thunders was a message of brotherhood, the beginning of a oneness, a true spiritual sharing between the native and the non-native. He had been asked to speak about his powers, the powers of native medicine, but he stood before the audience now to explain that the time for that has not yet arrived. Although there are many new people of good heart and good will who would like to shake hands with the native and forget all about the past, that cannot be allowed to happen. Not by the natives, nor by the law of karma. The time for sharing will be right when non-natives are prepared to meet their native brothers on a spiritual level. It is the task of the new friends who would like to share the wisdom and experience of their native brothers to bring about the conditions in which meaningful intercourse can take place. Our teachers tell us that it's up to the good white people to correct what the bad ones are doing. We're not supposed to do that for you. There are things that are being done by your government, and we feel that there are a lot of good white people who don't know about these things. It will be up to you to do what you must do in your own way. We are told to do things in our own way. We natives have work in our own way, and you people, whatever it is you know to do, you must do in your own way. We will not tell you what to do, because we ourselves do not like being told what to do. You do not claim to have all the knowledge about medicine or whatever, and not all of the knowledge can be put into books. It includes all nature, all of life, and there's too much of it. I will say that we natives do know some things the same as other people know some things, and that's why we should share. We would be better off if we could share. We natives are the keepers of the land. We don't claim that we own the land, and nobody else does either. Some give themselves a paper that says they own so much land, but it does not mean anything. We do not own the land, and certainly nobody else owns it. The Great Spirit owns the land, but it was delegated to us. We are the keepers of the land. Wherever you go on this land, if there are any natives left, any survivors at all, there will be those among the original people who know the law of life and land and air. That's our job. Just like other people are delegated for other things, we are supposed to work together to make life good for all of us, all who live upon this Mother Earth. We don't make any claims or demands. We don't say that the whites should go back to Europe or anything like that. No native has ever said that. We say there is room for everyone, that we are supposed to live as brothers and share. That is the way it should be. Your people did not find a bunch of savages here. You got your constitution from the Iroquois nations. Some of your best medicines you got from us. Turpentine, quinine, camphor, and cocaine. Even the penicillin we got out of the mold of the oak log, and we had that long before you came. Much of our knowledge had to be hidden. Some of this is even written in books, but these things are not to be revealed at this time. We do not want to get into any trouble. We do not look for contests, and we do not believe in competition. We flow with nature, and we are guided by the spirit of brotherhood and sharing in all things. But until we are all in accord with the Spirit, some of these things cannot be revealed. Not too long ago, there was an old medicine man named Patrick Sundance who was curing cancer and sugar diabetes and other things among the Mormons and other people over in Utah. He was curing a lot of people. Then, the American Medical Association had him put on trial, and they gave him the choice of leaving the state or going to jail. That old man was 87 years old. The courtroom was full of people who wanted to testify on his behalf, and they would let not one of them testify. The old man is dead now, but they managed to obtain some of the medicines that he had been using, and they are still experimenting with his medicines in 2 universities in this country, trying to discover his secret so that they can begin to cure people as they know he did. The law of this land says we are all brothers, we are all sisters, and we are all supposed to share. There will come a time, I am sure, when we can all share our knowledge. And that time will be much sooner when you change some of the stupid laws that have repressed my people. Like the stupid law that says a man cannot practice his own medicine in his own country, and help put things back in their proper order. These are your laws, not ours. We did not make such laws. We have a different law. We recognize one sovereign only, and that's the Great Spirit. Some people say, I am not like that. I am different. Why can't you do something for me? Well, think about that. Think about where you are at, and then begin to do something to make it better for everyone. Rolling Thunder had often talked to me about karma. The Native Americans, like the East Indians, have been talking about karma for centuries. There may well be a word for karma in many of the tribal languages among the Native Americans. Now that the new Americans had begun using the Sanskrit word, Rolling Thunder had also begun to use it. Karma has no relation to the concept of punishment, for the word is used by those who teach that there is no sin. To Rolling Thunder, karma provides opportunity for giving of oneself to all of life. The giving must be active and unselfish. It is non-self-seeking and non-self-indulging. To Rolling Thunder, it is the resolving of karma, aims, purposes, obligations, and action that moves one along the path toward enlightenment. Upon this path, psychic powers and psychic phenomena are incidental and secondary. We are born with a purpose in life, and we have to fulfill that purpose. Some of our young men go out when they are 12 or 13 years old and pray and fast at a sacred place. They learn their purpose in life. Now we hear of the new young people talking about finding their identity, their place in life, and they are very wise to do that, if they can do it. Some of them have, I think, and they are now trying to make things better for other people, which is our only purpose in this life, to share with others. To Rolling Thunder, one's function, identity, and karma are not only individual, but also racial, national, and global. Though it might not be said for other people and other places, Rolling Thunder believes it is true of white society in America, that what stands first between this society and the realization of a higher human potential is this society's racial karma. Rolling Thunder did not speak that day only about problems and tasks. He talked about his homeland and his travels, and about his medicine rituals and some of his patients. He explained how a medicine man must be able to leave the physical plane and to make a conscious trip to the other side. We all live many lifetimes, he said, and it felt as though this idea was no longer strange to hear, even in public. We live many lives. We go through different lives, and sometimes we are able to put together the different lives. That is the way it is. We go from one life to another, and we should have no fear of death. It is just a transition. Those who are able to work with concepts of psychic healing and other psychic phenomena would no doubt welcome much more workable hypotheses than the story of the devil and the pearly gates, or the postulation that the path of life is from death to death, from nothingness to oblivion. But perhaps they did not expect to hear about reincarnation from a Native American. Yet this has been a major concept or view of life held by virtually all ancient cultures. Pagan means pure in ancient Greek, Rolling Thunder went on, and primitive means first. These are not bad words. They don't mean savage or ignorant. I have done some studying of your history too, and I know that there are some of your people, your European brothers and sisters, who still believe in the old ways. But some of your ancestors, who came here from that land across the water, conjured up a hell and a devil that did not exist before. But they conjured it up. Because if you believe in something, and believe in it long enough, it will come into being. So they created that, and they brought it here with them, and we natives don't want any part of it. These things we call false teachings. They teach us to fear, to be afraid that we are going to be punished. This is why a person grows up with fears and anxieties, and later finds himself seeing a psychiatrist. The medicine power is not dying out. In fact, it is coming again to many of our young people. Years ago, they were saying that one day there would be no medicine people. But we were not fooled at all. We knew that we would not die out. We knew that one day, as though it had begun overnight, the power would be seen to be returning again. Now it is coming back strong, and I see it returning among other people too. People who had once lost their identity and their trail, their way of life. Then Rolling Thunder spoke about San Francisco. Now, I'll try to tell you some spiritual things related to this area. Not too long ago, people had made some predictions that this part of the country was supposed to sink underwater, and I was kind of worried about that. Well, in my country, we have a way of coming together. Some of the medicine people, the old people, and we compare our dreams and prophecies. One night, an old man who had never been out of his area, in fact, he couldn't speak English, talked about the place called San Francisco. He said, "I have seen it like an island with water most all the way around it, and I have seen it like a mushroom, with one little stem underneath, holding it up." So what would that mean to you? Well, we interpret these things. They are all symbolic. The meaning was, of course, that San Francisco had water around it, and that there was a lot of talk about it going underwater at the time. But that there was something good happening that was holding it up. That's what's been going on here. There are a lot of good things that have been happening in San Francisco from way back. So I started looking into this, and I started moving among many different people of many different races. I have met some people who are on a very high spiritual plane, like some of our medicine people. There are certain signs and indications when one meets the right ones. And sometimes it isn't even necessary to talk. Race and language makes no difference. The barriers are gone when persons can come together on a high spiritual levels. Every time I come back to San Francisco, I see it much better. There seems to be a kind of spiritual center here in this area. That's the way it looks to me. That's the feeling I get from it. So I'm going to carry this message back to my people, because don't forget it. While you're interested, and I'm glad you are, in how the natives live and about our spiritual beliefs and how things will be, we also, as your brothers, are interested in what you are doing. Rolling Thunder walked in his austere and deliberate manner across the stage and down the steps of the aisle. There was a long, standing ovation. The next event of the day was lunch. We were served in a private room that had been provided for the program participants. I had thought Rolling Thunder might want to leave after lunch, but he decided to stay to hear the afternoon and evening sessions. He looked stimulated and intensely interested. Tomorrow at the speaker's breakfast in Tiburon, I said to Rolling Thunder, you have a better chance to talk to all of the speakers. Well, we should take the chance to talk to the lady, the sister we met at the radio station, he said. There's something of interest that I'm thinking I'll hear from her. This was during an afternoon in Mission. We were standing in a side hallway and Rolling Thunder was leaning on the wall, puffing his pipe. We had just heard Elmer and Alice Green speak about the research at the Menninger Foundation. Rolling Thunder had listened with apparent familiarity as they talked about biofeedback and autogenic training, the parallels of these processes to Rolling Thunder had listened with apparent familiarity as they talked about biofeedback and autogenic training, the parallels of these processes to yogic techniques and their implications for psychotherapy and creativity. After the peyote tea ceremony last month, when Rolling Thunder held my cup of tea and talked about our research project, I was willing to believe that, on some level, he now realized what goes on in the psychophysiology laboratory. Back in the auditorium, Sister Justice Smith got up to speak and Rolling Thunder leaned forward in his chair. If she should give some clues as to what she knew that he wanted to learn, he intended not to miss it. Sister Justa talked about her work with known psychic healers in the biochemistry laboratory at the Human Dimensions Institute at Buffalo, New York. She explained in technical terms and with a great deal of supporting data how her subjects had produced changes in enzyme solutions in vitro. Then she spoke about another research project that she had recently begun. She described a process called chromatography, which showed a visible chemical difference between natural vitamin C and synthetic vitamin C, adsorbic acid. On the large screen were projected impressive color slides of the synthetic and natural vitamin. The natural vitamin C images looked like a cross-section of an orange, apple, or other living thing. One can see what looked like lines of force. The natural vitamin produced images with brilliantly colored rays or fingers, in striking contrast to the dull, flat-looking concentric circles produced by the absorbic acid. Rolling Thunder leaned back in his chair and put a hand to his chin. My mind went back to the January day when he had answered my 4 questions before I asked them, and talked about natural vitamins. There's going to be some way to show the difference so that people can see it. Some instrument or some system that will show this, and I have a feeling we'll find out what that is and we can use that too. I have a feeling that's right around the corner. I looked at him. He gave me a knowing glance. See? He said. Just around the corner, I repeated to myself. At this conference, people were speaking about man-nature relationships, self-regulation, preventative medicine, self-healing, creativity, yogic and Taoist techniques, and the transcendent human potential. I wondered what was around the corner. I believed now that Rolling Thunder could see around the corner. If only he could tell what he saw. Perhaps just around the corner there was a new society, a new world, a new humanism, lifestyle, and awareness. I recalled words I had often heard from Rolling Thunder and heard again in his lecture that morning. Back in Oklahoma, some years ago, there was a meeting, the first such high-level meeting in over 100 years, where chiefs and medicine men came together from all over the continent, and even some from South America. The Iroquois came from New York, and they brought a board with writing on it. On the last day of the ceremonies, we formed a huge circle. The circle is the Great Spirit's emblem. All life is a circle. The world is a circle, and the atoms are circles. The circle is seen on the rock writings, and it goes around all things. It takes in all things. When we met in Oklahoma, we formed a huge circle of all native tribes, and we smoked the peace pipe to the sun, and it stayed lit all around that huge circle. Then the Iroquois brought out the board with writing on it, and they interpreted it. They said, "Today our tribes are united again." The emblem showed a chain of hands, people holding hands in a circle. And they said, "Today our people have formed the circle of brotherhood and friendship here." Eventually, this circle will go all around the world. The brotherhood and peace that the world is seeking will now start on this land here. All the people here will be joined in the circle of friendship and brotherhood, and that circle will go around the world. It's not like an organization. It's not a regimented or an organized thing. This is the way natives do things. It's meant to be. It happens. And that's it. From Council Grove, Kansas, in 1971, to the Association for Humanistic Psychology Conference at San Francisco in 1972, I had made a complete circle with Rolling Thunder. Now as I sat beside him in the Masonic Auditorium, now as he gave me that familiar knowing look, I began around again. I could see this was going to be a larger circle. Chapter 26, Epilogue. Our first impression of Rolling Thunder at the conference on voluntary control of internal states in April 1971 was one of internal silence. To us, this was an alerting signal. Having experienced a similar kind of silence during the psychophysiological research with Swami Rama, Rakesh, India, it was natural to wonder whether, and in what ways, these two very different people might be alike. Ironically, by a stroke of fate, they are both called Indians. In Idris Shah's terminology, both would be called Sufis, and certainly both men are medicine men. Swami Rama's personality is more Western than Rolling Thunder's, in that he often puts pressure on others according to the dictates of his personal will. At the same time, his view of nature as the mother, by whose leave we handle energy both inside the skin, as in controlling the heart, and outside the skin, as in psychokinesis, is similar to Rolling Thunder's view of nature as the Great Spirit, with whom we can align ourselves with and whose energy we can then act. Some scientists are coming to think that there might be something wrong with traditional views of matter, energy, and probability. Both Swami Rama and Rolling Thunder handle psychophysical energies on occasion in ways that would seem strange, if not impossible, to Victorian scientists. But modern science is beginning to have more room for not easy to explain phenomena. The discovery of the multiplicity of high energy particles has given theoretical physicists new view of nature. Matter, fields, and energy seem to meet in a sub-nuclear domain in which the usually accepted rules of probability may not hold. A well-known statistician, with whom we once worked, outlined the problem quite clearly when he A well-known statistician with whom we once worked outlined the problem quite clearly when he asked what was the major scientific fallacy in J.B. Ryan's work in parapsychology at Duke University. The statistician had attended a conference of a statistical society at which Ryan demonstrated his equipment and explained his techniques for data analysis. There was no fallacy, our colleague said. What a surprise! He was not noted for belief in parapsychological phenomena, and if he felt no fallacies were involved in Ryan's work, it did not leave many scientific alternatives. No, he said, there are not many alternatives. In fact, the way I see it, there are only two. Either there is something to it, or there is something basically wrong with their ideas of physics and mathematics. Due to my conservative and perhaps stuffy upbringing, it is easier for me to believe that there is something wrong with mathematics and physics than to believe there is something to it. What a delightful self-defeating answer. There is something wrong with classical mathematics and physics, and it is partly because there is something to it. When we say that an honest coin has a 50 chance of coming up heads or tails when flipped, we are really saying that in our ignorance of the actual factors involved, air density, temperature, humidity, flipping force, momentums, elastic coefficient of the landing area, path length, and so forth, we cannot predict what will happen. If every variable were known, a computer could easily predict each event while the coin was still in the air. At this gross level, prediction is possible. But if we take a continuously closer and more microscopic view of nature, we finally arrive at a position in which the observer significantly influences the observed. The electron beam in an electron microscope can significantly modify the material being examined. Eventually, physics and mathematics can no longer determine either what is happening or what will happen. No undistorted information can be obtained about all aspects of an investigation. There is a realm of uncertainty. Although the mechanisms of parapsychological events are not yet determined or understood, it is an empirical fact that the observer in a parapsychological investigation often influences the event he is observing. Is the situation analogous to the way in which the electron beam modifies the observed specimen? Possibly, but the point is that mathematics cannot describe nature accurately either in physical science or in psychokinesis, and psychokinetic events, however implemented, are part of the problem of science and mathematics. How often do physicists unconsciously influence events they observe and discard legitimate but unexpected results because they contain an element of psychokinesis and therefore do not fit classical theory? This is an interesting question. No doubt a set of theorems and multidimensional equations will eventually describe the observer-observed interaction, so that parapsychological data can be mathematically absorbed into science. But in the meantime, to quote Swami Rama, every man can have his own hypothesis, but he still has to account for the facts. Dr. R.A. McConnell of the Department of Physics, University of Pittsburgh, brought another viewpoint to our attention in his ESP Curriculum Guide. McConnell quoted Eugene Connon, former head of the United States National Bureau of Standards. Flying saucers and astrology are not the only pseudosciences which have a considerable following among us. There used to be spiritualism. There continues to be extrasensory perception, psychokinesis, and a host of others. Where corruption of children's minds is at stake, I do not believe in freedom of the press or freedom of speech. In my view, publishers who publish or teachers who teach any of the pseudosciences as established truth should, on being found guilty, be publicly horsewhipped and forever banned from further activity in these usually honorable professions. In spite of such admonitions, we must continue to gather data and attempt to understand the unusual events of nature. If we go about it in the right way, perhaps we will find the reality of present-day science is a special case of a more general reality. Castaneda's experience with Don Juan, Drs. Edgar Mitchell, Russell Trarg, and Harold Perthoff's experience with Uri Geller at the Stanford Research Institute, Dr. Charles Twart's experience with Robert Monroe, our experience with Swami Rama and Jack Schwartz, and Doug Boyd's experience with Rolling Thunder, to name only a few of the more recent observations, all have similar ingredients, namely, open-minded observers and research subjects who have unusual powers of perception and of energy control. Our inference from these various investigations and from pondering yogic theory is that a unique energy field, a field of mind, must surround the planet, expressed in some aspects of electrostatic, magnetic, and gravitational fields, and each individual mind, with its extension, the body, must have the inherent capability of focusing energy for manipulation of both in-skin and out-of-skin events. We also infer that the individual mind and the general field of mind meet in the unconscious. If we grant that most persons cannot perceive or control their own unconscious psychological processes, it is then understandable that most persons would be unaware of this field of mind. Perhaps it is an important clue that the persons who are most aware of their own normally unconscious processes are the ones who seem to most easily control their own nervous systems and psychological processes, heart, blood flow, brain waves, and pain, and who also seem to have their greatest extrasensory awareness of others, and the greatest ability to generate out-of-skin events, that is, to demonstrate psychokinetic powers. It seems that we are on a threshold of a breakthrough in human awareness that new energies will be studied by scientists and brought to the service of humans in general. This undertaking is not without danger. For delusion, illusion, fantasy, and fact are mixed together in this field, somewhat proportionate to the clarity of the observer. Unless a person is very clear, very straight, he may often find what he wishes to find because his projections, mental and emotional constructions, will be thrown against the screen of substance, which makes up the mind field. In the field of parapsychology, it is a well-known fact that the observer's attitude has significant effect on the results. In other words, the scientific observer is himself in the test tube, along with his chemicals. In physics and parapsychology, the observer is part of the equation. Rolling Thunder knows this and reveals it in ways that are not always obvious. But Douglas Boyd is an unusual observer. For one thing, he is not a scientist. He is an observer who can himself be silent, can observe without stirring the waters, so to speak. And so the reflection he sees of Rolling Thunder's reality is relatively uncontaminated by prejudgments. It is for this reason, perhaps, that he has found it possible to understand exotic cultures from the inside. And it was for this reason that we asked him to work with Swami Rama and later invited him to the Council Grove Conference to meet Rolling Thunder. And that is the very end of the book, my friends. Thank you so much for listening to each chapter. It really means a lot to me. It's been quite a journey. I first recorded my first chapter back in November, so it's coming on 9 months-ish that it took me to record all of this. The next book I record, I promise, will not take 9 months. I'm looking forward to the next one. If any of you have any remaining questions about the book or your own thoughts that you wish to share, I would certainly love to hear them. As always, Niawa. Take care.